In the spring of 2021, I was 24 years old, working as a bookkeeper, $19,000 savings, and a crazy idea to build a village of cabins in nature. Today, I'm finally breaking down the whole story, exactly how much it costs, how I was able to finance it, how I came up with the design, the near disaster that almost sunk us before we'd even opened, and all the lessons learned along the way. And I brought Lucas along. He's 3, and he was born just after we opened. So without further ado, welcome to Live Oak Lake. Before we dive in, would you please do me a favor, like and subscribe? It means a whole lot as I grow the channel. Let's start with some backstory. I'm one of 10 kids. We grew up on a farm just 7 minutes from Live Oak Lake today. So we saved up money and we buy farm animals and we'd build sheds and barns and milk cows and grow gardens. I remember as an 8 or 9-year-old waking up and going out and clearing trails in the forest behind our home, building forts. My dad was a plumber and my grandfather built homes. We'd go to job sites when we weren't doing school or working on projects around the farm and really learned how to make things happen in the real world. My grandma Janny gave us art lessons, and so she imparted to me the art of noticing. I never went to college, none of my siblings did, but I was always studying architecture. I loved it. And in my early 20s, after running construction projects, I started a cloud-based bookkeeping company. And I was planning to grow that to the moon. But one day I woke up and thought to myself, I do not want to be sitting in an office, crunching numbers, no matter how much money it makes or how successful I might be. And so this dream to build a village of charming cabins in nature clicked for me, and I started looking for land. When I was 12, our family moved to the Northwest, and I lived there for 12 years before moving back to Texas. Seeing some of the architecture there deeply influenced my appreciation for Scandinavian design. And I wanted to import a slice of the P&W here in the heart of Texas with the live oak trees and the cactus and the white rock. Now, while I was looking for land, I started actively scrolling Pinterest and making essentially a mood board of exactly what I wanted to create. Do just the corner. About 4 months into the land search, one morning I opened Zillow. I was still laying in bed. I saw this new listing. It was like 6 hours old. And the listing photo was a drone shot with this little muddy cow pond. I'd driven by this place dozens, if not hundreds of times growing up, never thought anything of it. I remember getting out of the car, shaking hands with the realtor, slipping my mud boots on, and we started walking through the trees. And I kid you not, I had chills. I just knew this was the place to build. If you tune out the technology and all the distractions, you can feel a place. And great design to me is always about harmonizing with nature, not imposing what you want to do on top of it. So I knew right away this was the place. Got it under contract like an hour later. $130,000 for 5.1 acres, all cash offer to close in 30 days. I did buy 2 or 3 different building plans from Den Outdoors, great company. I then redlined and took elements from the different plans that I liked, added my own elements, hired a freelancer on Fiverr for a few $100, and created my own proprietary design. Now, we had 7 cabins, 5 2-bedroom and 2 1-bedroom, and a commons area. How did I arrive at 7 cabins? Again, the land has to speak to you. So we toyed with like 9 or 10 and as little as 2 or 3. Of course, we're also balancing the numbers, what pencils at the rates that we are supposing. And by the way, I did not take a data first or analytical approach. It was very much lead with taste, lead with the vision. And you've heard the classic line, if you build it, they'll come. Stupid or not, that's what we went for. And it ended up working. I think it's also what turned a number of banks off. I did not come from money. Trust me when I say that. I grew up in a mobile home. Remember, I only had $19,000 of savings. My dad and brothers back up in Idaho have a small contracting business. They had been building from bathroom remodels to small homes and eventually some small commercial projects. And through that had developed relationships with lenders in Idaho sufficient to get an operating line of credit. They said, we're in right away. And we ended up structuring it as a 45% equity to them, 55 to me, yet no one was going to bring equity. We were all gonna just loan money or financial vehicles like their line of credit to the project. So the hard part was still in front of me, which was convincing a bank to give us a construction loan. I literally got laughed out of the room by some of the local banks that thought I was straight up stupid. But I finally found a bank, shout out to TF&B here in Waco, that agreed to finance 80% loan to value at like 5.5% interest. Time was of the essence. We were coming out of COVID. I knew the demand was going to be crazy. Here are the two secrets I wish I had known about when I was building. Number one, SBA loans. Only some banks will partner with the Small Business Administration, but the government essentially subsidizes small businesses and entrepreneurs, and micro resorts qualify. So I wish so badly I had known about that. You can get up to $5 million. The 7A program is a great one, also the 504. The second move was rewards-based crowdfunding. I have half a dozen friends who have raised between $400,000 and $1 million plus without giving up any equity through this thing called rewards-based crowdfunding. So if I had to break it all down, the playbook is essentially you need about $10,000 or $15,000 to start. You create your renderings and your marketing material, your landing page, and then you start running targeted Facebook ads to attract just the kind of guests in the right geography or the right spending habits that you're looking for. And then you require them to put down a small deposit, like $1 to $50 deposit, just to become eligible to pre-book. Now, once you find traction with the ads, then you can scale that, but those $50 deposits actually fund the ads campaigns. You build up a list over a few months, and then on the appointed day, open your calendar, say a year out, 18 months out, or maybe you don't even have a calendar yet. You just start selling the stays 2 nights, 3 nights. You have a few different packages, and you may include some other benefits in there, what would normally be upsells. And that's when the $2,000, $1,000, $3,000 deposits come in, and that's how you can raise in, say, a 30-day window. Like I said, one's raised 400, one's raised 803,000, another over $1 million. And this is just brilliant because the guests now are essentially giving you an interest-free loan, and they think like an owner. So you get the best of both worlds. They're telling all their friends about it, and then you can invite them out for the groundbreaking. You can include them in some of the decision-making, the design, the amenities. So it's a brilliant model. I wish so badly I'd known about it. I'm actually going to be breaking down my entire 10-step process for how to design, build, fund, and operate your own micro resort in a live workshop, including Q&A sometime soon. So stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to tell you more details about that later. Is that fun?
Yeah. No, I can't see the drone anymore.
In March 2021, we break ground. It's one of the wettest springs on record. We have trenches open on all of our roadways, big mistake by the way, for utilities. Therefore, until we got the utilities in, we couldn't actually drive in, so it was a muddy, muddy mess. The cost of lumber tripled, I think, in about a 3 or 4 month period. So I was faced with this choice: do we pause building or do we just go for it? And again, opportunity cost just seemed way too high to wait, with who knows if lumber was going to keep going up, so we went for it. It took us about 5.5 months. We got all the frames up, and then we had to figure out all these complex building techniques, like using a 25-foot continuous standing seam metal panel for the side of the cabin and for the roof. And we engineered the system, snipping little slots in the ribs and then over creasing them, and therefore had a perfectly clean, eaveless edge. I think growing up on a farm and doing all those hands-on projects serves you well when it comes to creative solutions. During this 9.5-month crazy build process, I also built a $750,000 spec house about 10 minutes away with a construction loan from a different bank, was able to profit about $200,000, which all of that at closing rolled into the construction since we were way over budget. So you see these glass fronts. This was a critical piece of the concept that I had come up with. Well, the problem was I estimated $20,000 per unit. I got the bid back for $35,000 for the aluminum curtain wall. Multiply that times 7 cabins, you have a big, big problem. This is the prompt that you want to ask your general contractor, architect, or in my case, just the subcontractor. As I said, if this was your project and you wanted to achieve this look, what would you do? And he said, well, there's this other similar product called aluminum storefront. It's non-structural, but it looks very similar and it's way cheaper. So we spec'd that out for the triangle window in the gable, and then we have this glulam color beam, which is tying the structure together. We wrapped that in a hardy siding, painted it black, ordered custom wooden slider doors that we also painted black. This whole assembly, labor and materials, came out to roughly like $15,000. So we went from a roughly $100,000 budget deficit to $60,000 or $70,000 of savings that then we could roll into other important parts of the project, like the finishes inside, the furnishings, the landscaping. Landscaping is the most valuable money you can spend. It's the highest ROI money I believe you can spend on construction because landscapes appreciate. Unlike a structure like this, which is the most valuable on the day it's built. Now the land underneath it might get more valuable, but the structure, because of the law of entropy, is going to need maintenance. Landscapes need maintenance too, but if they're maintained and they're designed well, they actually appreciate, because the day you plant a tree is the least valuable that tree's ever going to be until the day it dies, which is maybe decades or hundreds of years down the road. So we spent about $160,000 on landscaping. Like most of the project, I designed it on the fly, in this case with the landscape subcontractor who is also creative. We went for a more naturalistic look and heavily invested in the commons area. A shipping container pool, flagstone patio with fire pit, a floating dock, kayaks and paddle boards. The shipping container pool was a pretty cool feature. That was about $80,000 all in. It's got a window in the side. That space was such great money spent because you can use the marketing from all those shots and obviously centralize that experience as an amenity for all the individual units. One thing that surprised me is how many group events we had requests for. Small weddings, corporate offsites, family reunions. We didn't design it for bigger group events or any weddings, but we had so many people wanting that. So that was another ancillary revenue stream we didn't see that ended up helping us a lot. I pre-ordered all the furniture, furnishings, appliances, everything down to the silverware 6 months in advance because I knew supply chain was backed up. And then I had 2 40-foot shipping containers I rented on site that I could keep everything there so that when we were ready for it, we just unloaded 2 40-foot shipping containers and started taking truckloads of furniture and all the different supplies to each of the cabins. So there I am. I'm wearing the GC hat, the architect hat, the developer hat, getting the loan. I'm also building a spec home. It was a crazy year. I worked 80 to 100 hours a week, and my amazing wife had grace for all of it. Lucas, our first, was born just months after we opened. And so I went from the season of intense sacrifice to being able to step back when we did open, reap some of those fruits, and be a lot more present for our kids. Now, another crazy thing happened about 3/4 of the way through. I was in White Rock, which is the cabin just down there, one day helping a subcontractor install a spiral staircase, and extension ladder slipped out from underneath me. I fell about 8 feet and was in a lot of pain. Turned out I had broken my pelvis, was in the hospital, multiple surgeries, was on crutches for the last 3 months of the project. Thank God everything healed up 100%. and I had an amazing network of friends and family around me to help bring this project over the finish line. So we finally get down to the finish line, big punch list, we get it done. My whole family comes together for our soft launch in January of 2022. Then we launch on Airbnb, we get 2 weeks of amazing bookings, and one morning I wake up and the entire account is suspended. I'll never forget seeing all those little red triangle icons. So I get on the phone with customer support and they're like, "I'm sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do." That started a 6-day soul-searching process of trying everything possible to restore the account, and they said that's an isolated department, we can't interfere with that. I wasn't on Instagram to speak of, but I had posted a few photos, had a couple hundred followers, and one of those was a travel influencer, Texas Explorer. I still remember her, Amanda. Of course I remember her. I told her what was going on, and she said, "I'd love to come out and promote you, but I'm 6 months out, but maybe you try a different one." So I got in touch, sent them photos. We threw up a direct bookings website with a payment link, a calendar. $950 is what it cost. I Venmo'd her the money. The giveaway went live, and within 7 days, we had about $40,000 of direct bookings and about 5,000 followers from scratch. So I tell people that was my eureka moment. We went all in on direct from that moment forward, invested 30 or 40,000 in influencer partnerships, and started creating our own content. Fast forward a year, had built up 150,000 followers, hit 94% occupancy year one, 80% direct revenue. Direct bookings are crazy because you're getting roughly 14% extra bottom line profit while still passing a small marginal savings to the guest. You're getting more aspirational guests because they're finding you on a social feed with immersive video content where they can envision themselves in it. And there's no middleman, so you can't ever be canceled. You have a direct line of communication with the guest, so you can really build the relationship. And we had guests come back 3 or 4 times in the first year. It's an amazing function if you can figure out how to build a shareable, what I call word of mouth worthy property. And then social media is just the megaphone or multiplier for word of mouth. Just went to check on Lucas. This is actually my favorite time of day. The sun just went down and you can see all the reflections in the water. It's really pretty. Total construction cost was $2.3 million all in. That included the interest on the construction loan while we built it. 5 months after we opened, we refinanced the project. The same appraiser came back, walked on site, saw the cabins, saw the cash flow, and the second appraisal was about twice the initial. So that meant we were able to shop the permanent financing to a different bank. It was actually a credit union on a 20-year note, great interest rate. This was June of 2022, right before everything spiked. Pull out every penny of capital from the construction loans, from the maxed out credit cards, from the $19,000 of savings, all of it, pay everyone off, plus about $400,000 tax-free. So that was pretty crazy. You have infinite cash on cash returns from that point forward. Our first year, we grossed right at $1 million and net just over $500,000 before debt service. After debt service, with 100% financing, we had about $180,000 of free cash flow and, raised our rates 8 or 9 times in those first 12 months. Had to take the filter off because it's getting darker. Now, something that not a lot of people talk about is the tax side of owning a micro resort. There's a massive, massive benefit called cost segregation and bonus depreciation that we took advantage of that ended up saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes. The IRS views a commercial property like this as a 39-year property, meaning that you can take the entire cost of the improvements, not the land, but the building cost, about $2.2 million in our case, divided out evenly over 39 years. It's like 2% or so a year. What we were able to do was front load a massive portion of that depreciation. So in year one, we were able to write off about $1 million. It's pretty crazy, but basically you get an engineer, a tax pro to come in, and they run what's called a cost segregation study, break out the landscaping, doors and windows, the finishes, the furniture, and all these pieces, the hot tubs, the fire pits that are 5, 7, and 15-year tax life, and all that stuff is eligible for what's called bonus depreciation. My friends at RE Cost Seg are the sponsors of today's video. They're the ones I trust to do the cost segregation studies. They actually have a free calculator, and I'm going to link it below in the description. If you are a real estate investor or are building a micro resort, in 60 seconds today, you can plug in your numbers and get an estimate of exactly how much you can save. Thanks to RE Cost Seg for sponsoring today's video. With the property management software, which I used HostAway, and the Operto third-party software and the smart home tech like the door locks, thermostats, noise monitors, and lighting, and then we also had a software called Wheelhouse that was the dynamic pricing, we created a system that operated with only 2 part-time employees, a maintenance manager and a guest operations communication manager, also, of course, the cleaners, which were contract labor. So there are ways to engineer incredibly nimble operation with thoughtful guest touch points that are much more valuable than a concierge on site or a lobby or a front desk that a traditional hotel would have. And I'm going to break down that whole operations playbook in the free live training. I'm going to tell you more in just a little bit. A few months after opening, I remember my dad pulling me aside and saying, hey, just the fact that everything has gone so much even better than we planned should be a pause and reason to consider selling. We ended up listing, got some tire kickers. The big lesson is nobody serious is going to be interested until you have at least a trailing 12-month P&L. And so we took it off the market, listed it for about $1 million higher in January of 23 with exactly 1 year of operating history, immediately had solid bites, got under contract. That deal made it all the way down to the final few days and the buyer backed out. They'd had a financing fall through that actually happened weeks before that they never told us about. And I learned a bunch of lessons, one of which I didn't get nearly enough earnest money in that process. I barely could even pay the attorney, let alone all my time. It's also an emotional roller coaster because I think we're selling and then we're not selling, and it's already my baby. I've invested so much of myself into the project. But I just realized if it's meant to be, it'll be. So we put it back on. 3 days later, got an offer $500,000 higher than the previous offer. That deal almost fell through 3 or 4 times. We could have walked with a lot of earnest money, but we chose not to. And finally, we closed on that deal. $7 million. It cost us $2.3 million to build 1.5 years before. I got permission from one of the guests to walk around Lakeside North, which may have been one of my favorite cabins. It's so peaceful down here at night. Oh, and look at that view of the container pool. So why did I sell? I was young. It felt prudent to take some chips off the table, but there's a deeper reason. If you're in hospitality, especially if you're a bit OCD like I am, you can never fully walk away from the meticulous stress of all the thousands of tiny details that go into delivering exceptional guest experiences. That has a real tax on you. So after the building process and then, 1.5 years of operating, I was starting to really feel the emotional and psychological burden of that. So a few takeaways. Number one, if you're gonna build something like this, do it a ways from a city in an unregulated type of place, at least if you wanna do it quickly. Of course it can be done all over, but there's no way I could have done this in 9.5 months if it wasn't for the location. Another takeaway, don't give up any equity unnecessarily because of things like rewards-based crowdfunding. If you can execute on a project like this, the value creation is just off the charts. You can refinance, pay off that debt, and be in a really good position. So if it's your first project, you're almost certainly gonna need partners, but I'd say bet on yourself. Now that being said, yes, I got lucky with the timing, and a lot of other things. And so there's probably a counter perspective of wisdom that would hedge some of this advice. There's a lot of ways this can fail. I think passion, commitment to excellence, really a conviction is probably the right word, is the ultimate decider whether or not you're going to be successful. Have an amazing team around you. All credit to my family, my friends, and ultimately to God. There were so many things that could have gone wrong, that did go wrong, that could have gone even worse, but at the end of the day, God really gets the glory. The project was a huge success in spite of me and all of my mistakes. In the video description, there's a link where you can sign up, and every so often I teach a free 60 to 90 minute live workshop breaking down all the lessons I've learned from this project and a bunch of others. You can bring your questions and ask me live. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. All right, now it's time to take Lucas home to mommy and get some dinner.